I woke up in a stranger's bed wearing nothing but his shirt, and he was my employee. That's how my entire life shattered and rebuilt itself in the same weekend. I'm Vivian Sterling, and 48 hours ago, I was the most feared executive in New York publishing. Untouchable, unstoppable, until I wasn't. What happened that night? How did I end up in Caleb Hayes' guest room? And why did his 8-year-old daughter's crayon drawing break through walls I'd spent 15 years building? This is the story of how I lost everything and found the one thing I never knew I needed. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment what city you're watching from so I can see how far this story travels. The smell hit her first. Fresh coffee, warm syrup, something sweet baking in an oven somewhere close by. Vivian Sterling's eyes snapped open and her entire body went rigid. This wasn't her ceiling. Her penthouse apartment had floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Central Park, custom Italian plaster walls in dove gray, and a chandelier that cost more than most people's cars. This ceiling was plain white. Ordinary. The kind of ceiling that belonged in a middle-class home in a neighborhood she'd never visited. Her head throbbed with a dull, persistent ache that felt like her skull was too small for her brain. Her mouth was desert dry, her tongue thick and useless. She blinked hard, trying to clear the fog, trying to remember. Nothing. The night before was a black hole. Panic crept up her spine like ice water. Slowly, carefully, Vivian looked down at herself. She was wearing a man's button-down shirt, navy blue, soft cotton. The sleeves were rolled up haphazardly, and it hung past her thighs like a dress she never would have chosen. And beneath it? Nothing. Her breath caught in her throat. No. No, no, no. This wasn't happening. This couldn't be happening. Vivian Sterling didn't wake up in strange beds wearing strange men's clothing with no memory of how she got there. She was the woman who controlled every room she entered. She was the senior vice president of Whitmore and Associates, one of the most prestigious publishing houses in Manhattan. She didn't lose control. Ever. She sat up too fast and the room tilted dangerously. Her stomach lurched. She pressed a hand to her forehead, willing herself not to be sick, and forced herself to breathe. In, out, in, out. Focus. The room was small but tidy. A dresser against one wall with a lamp and a stack of books. Thrillers, mostly, nothing literary. A simple gray comforter that smelled freshly washed. Clean white walls with no artwork, no personality. A window with thin curtains that let in weak morning light. A guest room. She was in someone's guest room. But whose? Vivian scanned the floor for her clothes, her purse, her phone, anything. She spotted her black pencil skirt draped over a chair in the corner, her silk blouse folded neatly beside it. Her heels sat underneath, paired together like someone had been careful with them. Her phone was on the nightstand, plugged into a charger that wasn't hers. Someone had taken care of her, but who? And why couldn't she remember? She reached for the phone with trembling fingers. The screen lit up, 8:47 a.m., Saturday morning. 12 missed calls from her assistant, 8 text messages, 3 voicemails. And then she saw it, a text from herself, sent at 2:34 a.m. I'm okay, staying somewhere safe, don't worry. The typos made her stomach turn. She never sent messages like that. Never. Footsteps sounded in the hallway outside the bedroom door. Vivian's heart slammed against her ribs. She grabbed the comforter and pulled it up to her chest, her body coiled tight, ready to fight or flee or scream. The door opened. And standing in the doorway, holding a mug of coffee and looking like he hadn't slept in days, was Caleb Hayes. Caleb Hayes, one of her junior editors, quiet, competent, invisible. The guy who never spoke up in meetings, who always met his deadlines without fanfare, who blended into the background so thoroughly that Vivian couldn't remember ever having a full conversation with him. He was tall. She'd never noticed that before. Probably 6'2", with dark hair that curled slightly at the ends and needed a trim. He wore jeans and a faded gray t-shirt, and his eyes, dark brown, careful, studied her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Not shock, not judgment, exhaustion. You're awake, he said quietly. His voice was low, steady, the kind of voice that didn't demand attention but somehow commanded it anyway. How are you feeling? Vivian opened her mouth, closed it, opened it again. "What?" Her voice came out as a rasp. She cleared her throat and tried again. "What happened?" Caleb stepped into the room but kept his distance, like he understood that she needed space. He set the coffee mug on the nightstand beside her phone. "You don't remember?" She shook her head, humiliation burning through her chest like acid. Caleb sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "I found you outside Murphy's Tavern around 1:30 this morning. You were sitting on the curb in the rain. Your phone was dead, and you couldn't tell me your address. You could barely stand." Murphy's Tavern, the dive bar 3 blocks from her office building. She'd walked past it 1,000 times and never gone inside. Vivian's mind scrambled for context, for memory, for anything. "I was drinking?" "You'd been crying," Caleb said gently. "You kept saying you didn't have anywhere to go, that you didn't want to be alone." The words hit her like a slap. No. She would never say that. She would never show that kind of weakness, especially not to an employee, especially not to someone like Caleb Hayes, who she'd probably spoken to a grand total of 5 times in the 3 years he'd worked at Whitmore. "I brought you here," Caleb continued, his tone carefully neutral. "You fell asleep in the car. I put you in the guest room, made sure you were okay, and left you to rest. That's it. Nothing else happened." Nothing else happened. The relief should have been immediate, but instead, a different kind of shame twisted through her gut. She'd been vulnerable in front of him, weak, out of control. Everything she'd spent her entire adult life trying to avoid. "Your clothes are over there," Caleb said, nodding toward the chair. "I washed them this morning. They should be dry. There's coffee, and I made breakfast if you're hungry. Bathroom's across the hall if you need it." He turned to leave. "Wait." The word came out sharper than she intended. Caleb paused, his hand on the doorframe. Vivian forced herself to meet his eyes. "Why did you help me?" It was the question that didn't make sense. She wasn't kind to him. She wasn't kind to anyone. She was the woman who made junior editors cry in manuscript meetings. She was the woman who sent emails at 2 a.m. and expected responses by morning. She was the woman who didn't remember her employees' names unless they were important enough to matter. Caleb looked at her for a long moment, and something flickered across his face, something that might have been pity or understanding or sadness. "Because you needed help," he said simply. "And I was there." Then he left, pulling the door closed behind him with a soft click. Vivian sat frozen in the bed, staring at the space where he'd been standing. Because you needed help, like it was that easy. Like kindness was just something people did without calculating the cost. She wanted to hate him for seeing her like this. She wanted to grab her clothes and leave and pretend this never happened. But her body wasn't cooperating. Her head still pounded, her hands still shook. And beneath the humiliation and the panic, there was something else. Exhaustion. Bone-deep, soul-crushing exhaustion. She picked up the coffee mug. It was warm in her hands, and the smell was rich and dark and perfect. She took a sip. It was exactly how she took her coffee. 2 sugars, a splash of cream. How did he know that? A voice drifted in from somewhere deeper in the apartment, high, bright, and unmistakably young. "Daddy, is the lady awake yet?" Vivian's stomach dropped. He had a child. Of course he had a child. She vaguely remembered seeing it in his file when HR had processed his paperwork years ago. Single father, custody arrangements, flexible scheduling needs. She'd approved it without thinking twice because he was a good editor and she didn't care about his personal life as long as his work got done. But now his personal life was her immediate, mortifying reality. "She's awake, sweetheart," Caleb's voice answered from the kitchen. "But she might need a little quiet time, okay? Let's give her some space." "Okay," the little voice agreed, followed by the sound of a chair scraping against the floor. Vivian closed her eyes. She needed to leave. Get dressed, call a car, go home, and bury this entire nightmare in the locked vault of things she refused to think about. But when she stood up, the room spun violently. She grabbed the edge of the nightstand to steady herself, breathing hard through her nose until the dizziness passed. She couldn't drive like this. She could barely walk, which meant she was stuck here until her body decided to cooperate. Slowly, carefully, Vivian made her way across the room and picked up her clothes. The skirt and blouse were neatly pressed. He'd actually ironed them. The care in that small gesture made something uncomfortable twist in her chest. She found the bathroom across the hall. It was small and clean, with a rubber duck sitting on the edge of the tub and a step stool in front of the sink decorated with cartoon butterflies. Evidence of a life she knew nothing about. Vivian caught sight of herself in the mirror and flinched. Her hair, normally sleek and perfectly styled, was a tangled mess. Her makeup was smudged beneath her eyes. Mascara streaked from crying she couldn't remember. She looked pale and hollow and broken. She looked human. The thought made her want to scream. Instead, she turned on the water and washed her face until her skin felt raw and clean. She found an unopened toothbrush in the cabinet, still in its packaging, like Caleb kept extras for unexpected guests, and brushed her teeth until the stale taste of alcohol and regret was gone. Then she stared at herself in the mirror and tried to remember. What had happened yesterday? The memory surfaced slowly, like something dragging itself up from deep water. The meeting. 4 p.m. Friday afternoon. The executive conference room on the 23rd floor. Vivian had walked in expecting a routine quarterly review. Instead, she'd found Marcus Whitmore himself waiting for her, the CEO, the man who'd barely spoken to her in 5 years, along with 2 lawyers she didn't recognize and a woman in a charcoal suit who introduced herself as Patricia Vance from Meridian Capital Group. Vivian had known immediately. Meridian Capital. The venture firm that had been circling Whitmore and Associates for months, sniffing around for an acquisition. She'd sat down, her spine straight, her expression neutral, while Marcus cleared his throat and said the words that ended 15 years of her life. We've decided to accept Meridian's offer. The acquisition will be finalized by the end of the quarter. As part of the transition, we're restructuring the executive team. Restructuring. Corporate speak for firing. Your position is being eliminated, Patricia Vance had said with the kind of practiced sympathy that meant nothing. We appreciate your contributions to Whitmore, but Meridian is bringing in their own senior leadership. We're offering a generous severance package. Vivian hadn't heard the rest. 15 years. 15 years of 80-hour weeks and missed holidays and sacrificed relationships. 15 years of clawing her way up from assistant editor to senior vice president. 15 years of being the smartest, hardest working, most ruthless person in every room. And it meant nothing. They'd handed her a folder with the severance agreement and told her to have a nice weekend. She'd walked out of that building in a daze, her heels clicking against the marble lobby floor, and kept walking until she found herself standing outside Murphy's Tavern with no memory of how she got there. And then, nothing. Just the rain and the darkness and Caleb Hayes' voice asking if she was okay. Vivian gripped the edge of the sink until her knuckles turned white. She'd lost everything. The job, the title, the identity she'd built brick by brick until it was the only thing she knew how to be. And the worst part, the absolutely unbearable part, was that she'd fallen apart in front of someone who worked for her, used to work for her. She didn't even work there anymore. A soft knock on the bathroom door startled her. Miss Sterling? Caleb's voice was muffled through the wood. Are you okay in there? She wanted to snap at him, wanted to tell him to stop checking on her like she was fragile, but her voice wouldn't cooperate. I'm fine, she managed. A pause. Breakfast is ready if you want some, Caleb said carefully. No pressure, but you should probably eat something. He walked away before she could respond. Vivian looked at herself one more time in the mirror. She could get dressed, call a car, leave. Or she could walk into that kitchen and face the consequence of her breakdown with whatever dignity she had left. The smart choice was obvious, but Vivian was so tired of being smart. She pulled on her skirt and blouse, both somehow perfectly clean and pressed, and ran her fingers through her hair until it looked somewhat presentable. Then she took a deep breath and opened the bathroom door. The apartment was small but warm. Hardwood floors, cream-colored walls, furniture that looked comfortable rather than expensive. Framed photos lined the hallway. A little girl at various ages, laughing, playing, growing up in snapshots. Caleb's daughter. Vivian followed the sound of clinking plates and quiet humming into the kitchen. It was bright and clean, with yellow curtains over the window and a small breakfast table pushed against the wall. Caleb stood at the stove, flipping something in a pan, and sitting on a stool at the counter, swinging her feet and coloring in a Disney princess book, was the little girl from the photos. She looked up when Vivian entered. 8 years old, maybe 9. Dark curls pulled into a messy ponytail. Brown eyes, her father's eyes, wide and curious. She wore unicorn pajamas and had a smudge of what looked like syrup on her cheek. "Hi," the girl said brightly, like meeting strange women in her kitchen was a perfectly normal Saturday morning occurrence. "I'm Lila. Are you my dad's friend?" Vivian froze. Caleb turned from the stove, a spatula in one hand. "Lila, remember what we talked about? Let Miss Sterling have some space, okay?" "It's okay," Vivian heard herself say. Lila grinned. "Do you like pancakes? My dad makes animal ones. He's really good. See?" She pointed to a plate on the counter where 3 pancakes were arranged to vaguely resemble a bear, a bunny, and something that might have been an elephant. "They're—" Vivian searched for words. "Very creative." "That's a nice way of saying they look weird," Lila said cheerfully. "It's okay. They taste better than they look." Caleb huffed a quiet laugh and shook his head. "Lila, give Miss Sterling a break. She's not feeling great this morning." "Oh." Lila's expression shifted to concern. "Are you sick? My dad always makes me ginger tea when I'm sick. It's gross, but it helps." Something cracked open inside Vivian's chest. This child, this happy, chattering, syrup-faced child, was looking at her with genuine worry. Not calculation, not judgment, just pure, uncomplicated kindness. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? "I'm okay," Vivian said softly. "Just a headache." "Dad!" Lila turned to Caleb. "Miss Sterling has a headache. Should we get the medicine?" "I've got it, sweetheart." Caleb was already reaching into a cabinet above the sink. He pulled out a bottle of ibuprofen and grabbed a glass of water. He crossed the kitchen and handed both to Vivian. Their fingers brushed for half a second, and she jerked her hand back like she'd been burned. Caleb noticed. Of course he noticed. But he didn't comment. He just stepped back and returned to the stove. "Sit," he said, nodding toward the breakfast table. "You need to eat." Vivian should have argued, should have maintained some control over this surreal situation. Instead, she sat. Lila abandoned her coloring book and climbed onto the chair across from Vivian, propping her chin in her hands. "So what's your name? My dad called you Miss Sterling, but that's really long. Do you have a shorter name?" "Lila," Caleb warned gently. "Vivian," Vivian said before she could stop herself. Lila tested it out. "Vivian, I like that. It sounds fancy. Like a princess, but also like a spy." Vivian blinked. Spy princess?" "Yeah, like someone who wears pretty dresses but also knows karate and has secret gadgets. That's a cool kind of princess." Caleb set a plate in front of Vivian, 2 perfectly golden pancakes shaped like a cat and a bird, with fresh berries and a small pitcher of syrup on the side. The smell made her stomach growl despite herself. "Eat," Caleb said again, softer this time. It wasn't a command. It was a kindness. Vivian picked up the fork. The first bite was warm and sweet and perfect, and she realized she couldn't remember the last time she'd eaten. Breakfast yesterday? The day before? She ate mechanically, one bite after another, while Lila chattered about her week at school and the science project she was working on about volcanoes, and how her best friend Emily had a new puppy named Waffles. Caleb sat down with his own plate and listened to his daughter with the kind of patience that felt like love made tangible. And Vivian sat there, a stranger at their table, and felt something dangerous stirring inside her. Longing, this warmth, this ease, this small, ordinary life that felt impossibly far from everything she'd built for herself. "So Vivian," Lila said, spearing a bite of pancake with her fork, "what do you do?" The question was innocent, simple, but it hit like a freight train. What do you do? 24 hours ago, she would have said, "I'm the senior vice president of one of the most powerful publishing houses in the country. I acquire best-selling authors. I negotiate 7-figure deals. I make careers now. Vivian's throat tightened. "I got fired yesterday." The words fell out before she could stop them. The kitchen went quiet. Lila's eyes went wide. "That's really sad. I'm sorry." Caleb's gaze sharpened, but he didn't look surprised. Maybe he'd guessed. Maybe he'd heard the crying she couldn't remember. It's fine, Vivian said quickly, mechanically. It's just business. These things happen. But her hands were shaking. Caleb stood abruptly and grabbed the coffee pot. He refilled Vivian's mug without asking if she wanted more, then topped off his own. Lila, he said quietly, why don't you go get ready? We need to leave for soccer practice in 30 minutes. But go. It wasn't harsh, but it was final. Lila recognized the tone. She slid off her chair, gave Vivian one last curious look, and padded out of the kitchen. The silence she left behind felt enormous. Caleb sat back down across from Vivian and cradled his coffee mug in both hands. I heard rumors, he said finally, about the acquisition. People have been talking for weeks. Vivian laughed bitterly. Apparently everyone knew except me. I doubt that. No, it's true. I was so focused on my projects, my authors, my next promotion. She stopped herself, took a shaky breath. I didn't see it coming. Nobody ever does. His voice was kind, too kind. It made her want to scream. I don't need your pity, Vivian said, sharper than she meant to. Caleb didn't flinch. I'm not pitying you, I'm just sorry. That's a terrible way to find out your work didn't matter as much as you thought it did. The honesty of it stunned her into silence. For what it's worth, Caleb continued, you were a brilliant editor, everyone knew it. The authors you signed, the books you championed, they changed the industry. And now someone else will take credit for them. Maybe. Or maybe you'll do something better. Vivian looked up sharply. Better than 15 years of my life? Caleb met her gaze steadily. Better than a company that didn't value you enough to fight for you. The words hung in the air between them. Vivian felt something crack inside her chest, something she'd kept carefully sealed for years. She looked down at her plate, at the half-eaten pancakes shaped like animals a man had made for his daughter on a Saturday morning, and realized she was crying. Not sobbing, just silent tears tracking down her cheeks like traitors. She wiped them away furiously. I'm sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. You're human, Caleb said gently. That's what's wrong with you. And somehow, impossibly, that made her cry harder. Caleb slid a box of tissues across the table and didn't say anything else. He just let her fall apart in his kitchen while his daughter sang off key in another room, and the morning light filtered through yellow curtains. When Vivian finally managed to stop, her head pounded worse than before, and her eyes felt swollen. I should go, she said hoarsely. Okay. But neither of them moved. Why are you being nice to me? Vivian asked. The question sounded small and broken. I was never nice to you. Caleb considered this. You weren't cruel either. You were just busy, focused. And honestly, he smiled faintly. I didn't need you to be nice. I needed you to be good at your job. And you were. The best I've ever seen. Past tense. Only because the job ended, not because you stopped being good. Vivian looked at him, really looked at him, for the first time since waking up in his guest room. Caleb Hayes wasn't invisible, not up close like this. He had laugh lines around his eyes and a scar on his chin and hands that looked like they'd built things, fixed things, held things together when they wanted to fall apart. He looked like someone who'd survived something difficult and come out softer instead of harder, the exact opposite of her. I'm starting my own agency, Vivian said suddenly. The words surprised her as much as they surprised him, but once she said them, she knew they were true. I have clients who will follow me, she continued, the ideas crystallizing as she spoke. Authors I've worked with for years. I have the connections, the reputation, the capital from my severance. I could build something new, something mine. Caleb's eyebrows rose. That's ambitious. I don't know how to be anything else. I believe that. Vivian hesitated. This next part was terrifying, but she'd already humiliated herself in every possible way. What was one more risk? I'd need an associate editor, she said carefully, someone I trust, someone who understands quality and knows how to make writers feel valued, not just productive. Caleb went very still. I'm offering you a job, Vivian said, her heart hammering. Better salary than Whitmore, better hours, remote flexibility. I know you need that for Lila. Full benefits, partnership track if things go well. Vivian, You're good at what you do, she pressed on. Better than good. I've seen your editorial notes. I've watched how authors respond to you. You make them better without making them feel small. That's rare. That's valuable. Caleb rubbed a hand over his face. This is a lot. I know. I'd need to think about it. Of course. And I'd need to know this isn't just gratitude or guilt or whatever this is. He gestured vaguely at the table, at the situation. Vivian straightened her spine, finding her old armor in the vulnerability. This is business. I need someone I can trust, and you're the best person for the job. Everything else is separate. It was a lie, and they both knew it. But Caleb nodded slowly. Okay, let me think about it. I'll give you an answer by Monday. Monday's fine. They sat there for another moment, the weight of the offer settling between them like something fragile and dangerous. Then Lila bounced back into the kitchen, now dressed in soccer gear with her hair in a fresh ponytail. Ready? She announced. Caleb stood. Let me drive you home, he said to Vivian. You're in no shape to take the subway. I can call a car. Let me drive you. It wasn't a request. Vivian found herself nodding. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in Caleb's aging Honda Civic with Lila chattering from the back seat about her soccer team's upcoming tournament. The car smelled like French fries and vanilla air freshener, and there was a car seat still installed even though Lila was clearly too big for it now. Evidence of a life lived in the margins between paycheck and paycheck, between responsibility and dreams. When they pulled up to Vivian's building, all glass and steel and doormen in uniforms, Caleb whistled low. Nice place. It's just a building. It's a palace. Vivian unbuckled her seatbelt but didn't get out yet. Thank you, she said quietly, for last night, for this morning, for all of it. Caleb's hands tightened on the steering wheel. You don't need to thank me. I do, though. In the back seat, Lila leaned forward. Are you coming to my soccer game? It's at 2 o'clock in Riverside Park. Lila, Caleb said, embarrassed. But Vivian found herself smiling, a real smile, small and uncertain, but genuine. Maybe next time, she said. Lila beamed. Okay, bye, Vivian. Goodbye, Lila. Vivian opened the door and stepped out into the cool morning air. She turned back one last time. Think about my offer, she said to Caleb. I will. Their eyes met, and something passed between them, an understanding, a question, a possibility. Then Vivian closed the door and walked toward her building, her shoulders straight and her head high, even though she felt like she might collapse at any moment. The doorman greeted her with the same polite deference as always. Good morning, Miss Sterling. Good morning, James. She rode the elevator to the 22nd floor, walked down the silent hallway to her apartment, and locked herself inside. The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it. Pristine, sterile, perfect. A museum of a life she'd built and never actually lived in. Vivian set her purse down on the marble counter and stood in the middle of her kitchen. The kitchen she'd never cooked in, never made pancakes in, never shared with anyone who mattered. And for the first time in 15 years, she let herself wonder if maybe, just maybe, she'd been building the wrong thing all along. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. It's Caleb, just making sure you got home okay. Vivian stared at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. I'm home. Thank you. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. Take care of yourself, Vivian. She set the phone down and walked to the window, looking out over the city that had taken everything from her and given nothing back. Somewhere out there, Caleb Hayes was driving his daughter to soccer practice in a beat-up Honda. He was making animal-shaped pancakes and keeping extra toothbrushes for strangers, and believing that kindness was something you just did without asking for anything in return. And Vivian Sterling, for the first time in her entire adult life, wanted to be part of something that simple, something that real. She didn't know if Caleb would take her job offer, but she knew with terrifying certainty that she wanted him to. Not just because he was a good editor, but because when she'd fallen apart in his kitchen, he'd looked at her like she was human. And maybe, just maybe, that was what she'd been missing all along. Outside, the city hummed with its endless noise. Inside, Vivian stood alone in her perfect apartment and began planning the next chapter of her life. one that wouldn't be built on ruthlessness and sacrifice, one that might, if she was brave enough, include people who saw her for who she really was, and still chose to stay. Monday morning arrived with the kind of gray, humid weight that made New York feel like it was holding its breath. Vivian stood in her walk-in closet, staring at rows of perfectly pressed suits and designer dresses that suddenly felt like costumes for a role she no longer played. Her hand hovered over a charcoal Armani blazer, her armor for 1,000 high-stakes meetings, before falling away. She chose black pants and a cream silk blouse instead. Simple, professional, but softer somehow. Her phone buzzed on the dresser. A text from her lawyer confirming the meeting at 10 a.m. to finalize the severance paperwork. Another from her accountant asking about quarterly tax estimates that no longer mattered. 3 LinkedIn messages from headhunters who'd somehow already heard about Whitmore's restructuring. Nothing from Caleb. It had been 2 days since he'd dropped her off in front of her building. 2 days since she'd made an impulsive job offer in his kitchen while his daughter ate pancakes and hummed Disney songs. 2 days of silence. Vivian told herself it didn't matter, that she'd been ridiculous to think he'd actually consider working for her after witnessing her complete breakdown, that she had plenty of other options for associate editors, better options probably, people with more experience and fewer complications. But every time her phone lit up, her heart jumped. She hated herself for it. By 9:30, Vivian was sitting in her lawyer's office in Midtown, signing away 15 years of her life in careful, precise strokes. Patricia Chen, her attorney, slid document after document across the mahogany desk with practiced efficiency. "The severance is generous," Patricia said, tapping a paragraph with her pen. 18 months salary, full benefits continuation for a year, and your stock options vest immediately. With the acquisition premium, you're looking at just over $2 million after taxes. $2 million. It should have felt like winning. Instead, it felt like a payoff to disappear quietly. "And the non-compete clause?" Vivian asked, scanning the contract. "Standard. You can't work for a direct competitor for 12 months, but starting your own agency? That's a gray area. As long as you're not poaching Whitmore's current client list or staff, you should be fine." "Should be?" Patricia smiled thinly. "Nothing's guaranteed, Vivian, but I've negotiated an addendum that gives you more latitude. You can represent authors who approach you independently, and you can hire employees who resign voluntarily. Just don't send mass recruitment emails from your old company account." Vivian signed the final page and pushed the stack back across the desk. "Done," Patricia said. "You're officially a free agent." Free. The word echoed strangely in Vivian's head as she walked out of the building into the humid morning. Free implied possibility, opportunity, liberation. All she felt was unmoored. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She answered without thinking. "Vivian Sterling?" "Miss Sterling? This is Amanda Corso." Vivian's breath caught. Amanda Corso, the literary agent who represented 3 of the biggest names in contemporary fiction, the woman Vivian had been courting for years, hoping to poach her clients for Whitmore. "Amanda, this is unexpected." "I heard about Whitmore." Amanda's voice was crisp, professional, but not unkind. "I'm sorry. That's a hell of a way to end a career." "It's not ending," Vivian said automatically. "I'm starting my own agency." "I know. That's why I'm calling." Vivian stopped walking. Around her, the Midtown lunch crowd flowed past in rivers of suits and cell phones. "You know? Publishing is a small world, Vivian. Word travels fast, and I've been thinking about making a change myself. CAA is too corporate these days. Too many committees, too much bureaucracy. I want to work with someone who actually cares about books instead of quarterly earnings reports." Vivian's mind raced. Amanda Corso wanting to join her agency? This was bigger than she'd dared to imagine. "I'm listening," Vivian said carefully. "I'll be direct. I'm looking for a partner, not an employer. Equal stake, equal say, combined client list. I bring 15 A-list authors and a team of 3 junior agents. You bring your editorial expertise and your reputation. We build something new together." It was perfect. It was everything Vivian needed to launch successfully. So why did her stomach twist with hesitation? "That's a generous offer," Vivian said slowly. Can I think about it? A pause. You're the one who's always 10 steps ahead, Vivian. What's there to think about? I've already made another offer. I need to see if it's accepted first. Another partner? An associate editor. Who? Vivian hesitated. Caleb Hayes. Silence. Then Amanda laughed. Not cruel, but genuinely surprised. The single dad from your editorial team? The one who never talks in meetings? Heat crept up Vivian's neck. He's talented. His editorial notes are exceptional, and authors trust him. I'm sure he's lovely, Vivian, but this is the big leagues. You need someone with gravitas, industry presence, not a junior editor who's still paying off student loans. The dismissiveness in Amanda's tone struck something raw in Vivian's chest. Caleb Hayes, she said coolly, has more integrity and skill than half the senior editors at Whitmore combined. He's exactly the kind of person I want to build something with. Another pause, longer this time. All right, Amanda said, her tone shifting to something more measured. I respect that. But my offer has a timeline. I need an answer by Friday. If you're not interested, I have other options. I'll let you know by Thursday, Vivian said. Thursday works. Good luck, Vivian. The call ended. Vivian stood on the sidewalk, her phone still pressed to her ear, and realized her hand was shaking. Amanda Corso. A partnership that would guarantee success from day one. Or Caleb Hayes. A risk that felt like something else entirely. Her phone buzzed again. This time, a text from a number she recognized. Caleb. Can we meet? There's a coffee shop on Amsterdam and 76th, Lou's place. Are you free around noon? Vivian checked her watch, 11:15. I'll be there, she typed back. Lou's place turned out to be exactly the kind of neighborhood cafe Vivian would normally never enter. Mismatched furniture, local art on the walls, the smell of fresh bread and espresso, and a chalkboard menu listing drinks with names like the Brooklyn Fog and Honey Lavender Dreamer. Caleb was already there, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of him. He stood when she approached, looking uncertain, like he wasn't sure if they were supposed to shake hands or hug or just nod. They settled on nodding. I ordered you a cappuccino, Caleb said. But I can get something else if... This is perfect, thank you. They sat. The coffee shop hummed with quiet conversation around them. Writers with laptops, students with textbooks, an elderly couple sharing a pastry. Normal life. The kind Vivian rarely noticed. Caleb wrapped his hands around his mug. I've been thinking about your offer. Vivian's heart hammered. And? He met her eyes. Why me? Really? You could hire anyone, someone with more experience, better credentials. Why take a chance on a single dad who'll need to leave early for school pickup and can't work weekends when I have Lila? The honesty of the question deserved an honest answer. Because when I fell apart in your kitchen, Vivian said slowly, you didn't treat me like I was broken. You treated me like I was human, and I've spent 15 years in this industry watching people treat authors like products and editors like machines. I don't want to build that again. Caleb's expression softened. That's a good reason. Also, your editorial notes on the Morrison manuscript last spring were the best I've seen in a decade. You helped her find the emotional core of that story without changing her voice. That's rare. That's what I need. The Morrison manuscript that Whitmore rejected? The same one. Which, by the way, I'm going to sign as my first client if she'll have me. A slow smile spread across Caleb's face. She will. I saw her tweet about the acquisition. She's not happy with how Meridian treated her. Good. Then we'll make it right. Caleb took a sip of his coffee, considering. I talked to Lila about it. Explained that I might be changing jobs, working from home more, which would mean more time with her, but also more responsibility for me. What did she say? She asked if you were going to be my boss again. I said technically yes, but it would be different. Smaller team, more collaboration. He paused. She said you seem sad and that I should help you if I can because that's what friends do. Vivian's throat tightened. She's a wise kid. Too wise sometimes. Caleb's smile faded into something more serious. I need to be honest with you, Vivian. I'm not doing this just because it's a good career move. I'm doing it because I think you're building something that matters, something better than what we left behind. But I need to know you're in this for the right reasons too. What do you mean? I need to know this isn't just about proving something to Whitmore, or to yourself. I need to know you actually want to create a place where people, authors, editors, everyone, are treated like human beings instead of assets. The directness of it should have offended her. Instead, it felt like relief. I want that, Vivian said quietly. I don't know if I know how to do it yet, but I want to try. Caleb studied her for a long moment. Then he extended his hand across the table. Okay, I'm in. Vivian shook his hand, and the simple gesture felt like a promise, like the beginning of something fragile and important. When can you start? She asked. I need to give Whitmore 2 weeks' notice. After that, I'm yours. I'm yours. The word sent an unexpected flutter through Vivian's chest that had nothing to do with business. She pushed it aside. I'm meeting with Office Spaces tomorrow, she said, shifting into planning mode. Something small to start. Maybe Chelsea or Flatiron. And I need to set up the LLC, open business accounts, get insurance. Vivian, Caleb's voice was gentle but firm. Breathe. She stopped. Realized she'd been talking faster and faster, her shoulders creeping up toward her ears. Sorry, there's so much to do. I know, but you don't have to do it all today. He smiled. Besides, you have a partner now. We'll figure it out together. Partner. The word settled over her like a warm blanket. They spent the next hour mapping out logistics. Caleb had a friend who was a graphic designer who could help with branding. Vivian had contacts at publishing houses who might send projects their way. They debated names for the agency, rejecting a dozen options before Caleb suggested something simple. What about Sterling Hayes Literary? He said. Clean, professional. Tells people exactly who we are. It sounds like a law firm. It sounds legitimate. Vivian considered it. Sterling Hayes. Her name paired with his, like they were equals, like she wasn't alone anymore. I like it, she said finally. Caleb grinned. Then it settled. Her phone buzzed, a text from Patricia Morrison, the author whose manuscript Whitmore had rejected. Vivian, heard you're going independent. I want in. Let's talk. Vivian showed Caleb the message. That was fast, he said. She's been waiting for an excuse to leave Meridian. I just gave her one. So we have our first client. We have our first client, Vivian repeated, and the reality of it hit her like a wave. This was actually happening. She was actually doing this. Over the next 2 weeks, Vivian's life transformed into controlled chaos. She signed a lease on a small office space in Chelsea, just 2 rooms and a shared conference area, but it had good light and exposed brick and felt nothing like the corporate sterility of Whitmore. She hired a business attorney, a CPA, and an HR consultant to handle the paperwork. She designed a website, ordered business cards, and set up a company email. And slowly, carefully, she began reaching out to authors. Not poaching, nothing that would violate her non-compete, just quiet conversations with writers whose contracts were ending, whose agents had retired, who were unhappy with their current representation. Patricia Morrison was the first to sign. Then James Chen, a thriller writer Vivian had worked with for years. Then Sarah Okonkwo, a debut novelist whose manuscript Vivian had championed against Whitmore's marketing team. By the time Caleb's 2 weeks were up, Sterling Hayes Literary had 6 clients and a waiting list. Caleb showed up at the office on his first official day carrying a box of his belongings from Whitmore and a bag of bagels from a shop near his apartment. Breakfast, he announced, setting everything down on the desk that would become his. Figured we should start this right. Vivian looked at the bagels, still warm, with cream cheese and lox on the side, and felt something catch in her chest. You didn't have to do that. I know, but Lila insisted. She said new jobs need celebration food. She's very wise for 8 years old. Almost 9, Caleb corrected with a smile. Her birthday's next month. Fair warning, she's already planning the party and wants to invite everyone she's ever met. Vivian poured coffee from the machine she'd installed in the tiny kitchenette. Are we everyone she's ever met? You definitely are. She talks about you constantly. Is Vivian going to be at the office? Does Vivian like horses? Can Vivian come to my birthday? The casual mention of Lila's questions made Vivian's heart squeeze. She's a sweet kid. She's a menace, Caleb said affectionately. But yeah, she's pretty great. They ate bagels and drank coffee and went through the client files together, dividing up responsibilities. Caleb would handle the day-to-day editorial work and author communication. Vivian would focus on acquisitions, contract negotiations, and business development. It should have felt awkward, this new dynamic between them. Instead, it felt natural. Caleb asked questions without apology. Vivian gave answers without condescension. They disagreed about strategy. Caleb wanted to prioritize debut authors while Vivian wanted to chase established names. But the disagreements felt productive rather than combative. "We can do both," Caleb said finally. "Build the prestige with big names, but create space for new voices. That's what makes an agency special." "That's idealistic." "That's the point." Vivian found herself smiling. "All right, we'll do both." Around 3 o'clock, Caleb's phone alarm went off. "School pickup," he said apologetically. "I need to leave by 3:30. "Go, I'll be fine." But Caleb hesitated at the door. "Are you sure? I can bring Lila back here if you need me to stay." "Caleb, go get your daughter. I'll see you tomorrow." He nodded, grabbed his jacket, and left. The office felt suddenly too quiet. Vivian worked until 7, sending emails and reviewing contracts and trying not to think about how empty her apartment would feel when she got home. Her phone rang. Amanda Corso. Right. She'd promised an answer by Thursday. "Amanda," Vivian answered. "I was going to call you." "I'm guessing that means no." Vivian took a breath. "I appreciate the offer. Truly. But I've already committed to a different structure. A smaller operation, at least for now." "With the single dad?" "With Caleb Hayes, yes." A sigh. "You're making this harder than it needs to be, Vivian, but I respect it. If you change your mind, the offer stands for another month." "Thank you. That's generous." "It's business. Good luck." The call ended and Vivian sat in the quiet office, wondering if she'd just made a terrible mistake. $2 million in severance would only last so long. A partnership with Amanda would have guaranteed security, prestige, instant credibility. Instead, she'd chosen uncertainty. She'd chosen Caleb. Her phone buzzed. A text from him. "Lila wants to know if you like chocolate or vanilla cake." Vivian stared at the message, confused. Why? For her birthday party, she's making a list of everyone's preferences, very thorough. Something warm bloomed in Vivian's chest. "Chocolate," she typed back. 3 dots appeared immediately. "She says good choice. Also, she wants to know if you're coming." Vivian's fingers hovered over the keyboard. A 9-year-old's birthday party, probably at a park or a roller rink or somewhere loud and chaotic and completely outside Vivian's comfort zone. She should say no, make an excuse, keep professional boundaries. Instead, she typed, "When is it?" "September 14th, Saturday afternoon. I know it's a lot to ask. I'll be there." The response came back almost instantly. "She's going to be so excited." "Thank you, Vivian." Vivian set her phone down and looked around the small office that was somehow becoming hers. No, not just hers. Theirs. She locked up and took the subway home, her mind already spinning with to-do lists and client strategies and 1,000 things that could go wrong. But underneath all of it was something unfamiliar. Anticipation. Not for success or recognition or validation, just for tomorrow. For working beside someone who saw her as a human being instead of a boss. For being invited to a 9-year-old's birthday party like she was someone worth celebrating with. The next 3 weeks blurred together in a rush of work and growth, and small, unexpected moments that felt like building a life instead of just a career. Sterling Hayes. Literary signed 4 more clients. Vivian negotiated a 6-figure deal for Patricia Morrison's novel. Caleb discovered a debut author through an online writing group and championed her manuscript so passionately that Vivian read it in one sitting and immediately offered representation. They fell into a rhythm. Caleb arrived at 9, always with coffee or pastries, or once, inexplicably, a bag of apples from a farmer's market near his apartment. Vivian stayed late most nights, but Caleb never judged her for it. He just made sure she ate something before he left for Lila's school pickup. And slowly, imperceptibly, the walls Vivian had built around herself began to crack. One afternoon, Caleb looked up from his laptop and said, "Can I ask you something personal?" Vivian tensed. "That depends on the question." When's the last time you took a day off? I don't know. Why? Because you look exhausted, and I'm pretty sure you slept here last night. I didn't. Vivian stopped. She had, actually. Fallen asleep at her desk around 2 a.m. and woken up with her cheek pressed against a contract at dawn. Vivian? Caleb's voice was gentle. You're allowed to rest. The agency won't fall apart if you take a weekend. I know that. Do you? The question hung between them. I don't know how, Vivian admitted quietly. To rest. To just stop. Caleb was quiet for a moment. Then he said, Lila's birthday is this Saturday. Come. Not as my business partner, just as a friend. Eat terrible cake, watch kids scream on a playground, and don't think about work for 3 hours. Friend. The word felt foreign and dangerous and exactly what she needed. Okay, Vivian said. I'll come. Saturday arrived cool and clear, the first hint of fall in the air. Vivian stood outside Riverside Park, watching families stream through the gates with balloons and gift bags, and children who ran ahead shouting with joy. She felt absurdly out of place. But then she saw Lila, wearing a purple birthday crown and a dress covered in stars, sprinting toward her with arms outstretched. Vivian, you came! You actually came! The little girl crashed into her with the kind of hug that didn't care about boundaries or professionalism or anything except pure happiness. Vivian froze for half a second. Then, carefully, she hugged back. Happy birthday, Lila. Come on, I have to introduce you to everyone. Lila grabbed her hand and dragged her toward a picnic area where Caleb was setting up tables covered with decorations. He looked up when they approached, and his smile was warm and genuine and made Vivian's stomach flip in a way that had nothing to do with anxiety. You made it, he said. I said I would. I know, but I'm still glad. The party was chaos in the best possible way. 20 children running wild, parents chatting on the sidelines, a boombox playing pop music, and a cake shaped like a unicorn that was almost too beautiful to cut. Vivian sat at a picnic table with the other adults, watching Caleb chase giggling children through an elaborate game of tag. He was good at this. Fatherhood, community, creating joy out of simple moments, everything Vivian had never learned how to do. A woman sat down beside her, mid-40s, friendly smile, yoga pants, and a Stanford sweatshirt. You must be Vivian, she said. I'm Rachel. My daughter Emily is Lila's best friend. Caleb's mentioned you. Has he? Only good things. He said you're business partners now. That's wonderful. Vivian nodded, unsure what to say. Rachel watched the children for a moment. Caleb's a good man. Best single dad I know. He deserves something good happening for once. For once? Rachel's expression shifted to something more careful. I don't know how much he's told you about Lila's mom. Nothing, actually. That sounds like Caleb. He doesn't talk about it much. Rachel paused. She left when Lila was 2. Just walked out one day and never came back. Caleb's been doing it alone ever since. The information landed like a punch. Vivian looked across the park at Caleb, who was now being climbed on by multiple children like a human jungle gym, laughing and pretending to collapse under their weight. He'd been doing this alone for 7 years. Raising Lila, building a career, surviving on whatever salary Whitmore had paid junior editors. And he'd still stop to help a drunk stranger on a rainy street. He's remarkable, Vivian heard herself say. Rachel smiled. Yeah, he really is. The party wound down as the sun started to set. Parents collected their sugar-crash children, and Lila opened presents with the kind of enthusiasm only 9-year-olds possess. When she got to Vivian's gift, a first edition of The Secret Garden that Vivian had found at a rare bookstore, Lila's eyes went wide. This is so old, she whispered, turning the pages carefully. Is it special? Very special, Vivian said. It's a story about a girl who finds a hidden garden and learns how to make things grow again, even when she thought everything was dead. Lila looked up at her with those wide, knowing eyes. Like you and my dad. The adults around them went quiet. What do you mean? Vivian asked softly. You were sad, and he helped you. And now you're growing something together. That's like the garden. Out of the mouths of babes. Caleb cleared his throat. All right, birthday girl, let's get this cleaned up before it gets dark. They packed up decorations and leftover cake, while Lila chased fireflies with the last remaining kids. Vivian found herself working alongside Caleb, folding tablecloths and stacking chairs in comfortable silence. Thank you for coming, Caleb said quietly. It meant a lot to Lila. To both of us. Thank you for inviting me. I wasn't sure you'd actually show up. Why? He glanced at her. Because this isn't your world. Kids' birthday parties and park picnics. I figured you'd find an excuse. Vivian should have been offended. Instead, she just felt seen. A month ago, you would have been right, she said. But things are different now. How? She met his eyes. I'm different now. The air between them shifted, charged with something neither of them was ready to name. Lila's voice broke the moment. Dad, can Vivian come over for movie night? Caleb blinked. Lila, I'm sure Vivian has... I'd love to, Vivian said, surprising herself. Caleb looked at her. You don't have to. I want to. And she meant it. An hour later, Vivian found herself on Caleb's worn couch, Lila curled up between them in fresh pajamas, watching Moana for what Caleb quietly informed her was probably the 100th time. The apartment was warm and comfortable and lived in, nothing like Vivian's sterile penthouse. It felt like home. Halfway through the movie, Lila fell asleep with her head on Vivian's shoulder. Caleb noticed and smiled. She likes you. The feeling's mutual. I can carry her to bed if she's bothering you. She's not bothering me. Vivian looked down at the sleeping child, at the trust in her peaceful expression, and felt something fundamental shift inside her chest. This was what she'd been missing. Not the corner office or the seven-figure deals or the recognition, just this. Connection, belonging, being part of something real. When the movie ended, Caleb carried Lila to her bedroom. Vivian stood awkwardly in the living room, unsure if she should leave or stay or what the protocol was for situations like this. Caleb returned, closing Lila's door softly behind him. More coffee? He offered. I should probably go. But she didn't move. Neither did he. They stood there in the quiet apartment, the only light coming from the kitchen, and Vivian realized with startling clarity that she didn't want to leave. She wanted to stay here, in this warm, imperfect space, with this man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to believe in her anyway. Caleb, she said softly, why did you really say yes to my offer? He considered the question. Honestly? Honestly. Because I've watched you for 3 years. Seen how brilliant you are, how hard you work, how much you care even when you pretend not to. And I thought, if she's brave enough to start over, maybe I can be too. The vulnerability in his voice made Vivian's breath catch. I'm not brave, she whispered. I'm terrified. That's what makes it brave. They stood there, the space between them humming with possibility. Vivian knew she should leave, should maintain professional boundaries, should protect herself from whatever this was becoming, but she was so tired of protecting herself. Thank you, she said finally, for everything. The party, the movie night, all of it. I haven't felt this human in a very long time. Caleb's expression softened. You're always welcome here, Vivian. You know that, right? She nodded, not trusting her voice. At the door, Caleb helped her into her coat. His fingers brushed her shoulders, and the simple touch sent electricity down her spine. See you Monday? He said. Monday, she confirmed. But as she walked to the subway, Vivian knew that something had fundamentally changed. This wasn't just business anymore. This was something far more dangerous. And for the first time in her carefully controlled life, Vivian Sterling had no idea what came next. The subway ride back to her apartment felt longer than usual. Every stop a reminder of the distance between Caleb's warm, cluttered life and her own pristine isolation. Vivian sat with her hands folded in her lap, still feeling the phantom weight of Lila's head on her shoulder, still hearing the child's sleepy breathing during the movie. When had she last felt that peaceful? Her phone buzzed, a text from Caleb. Thanks again for coming today. Lila's already asking when you can come back. Vivian stared at the message, her thumb hovering over the keyboard. What was the appropriate response? Something professional? Something warm? Something that didn't reveal how much she'd needed today. How desperately she'd craved the simple normalcy of sitting on a couch watching a children's movie. Tell her any time, she typed, then deleted it. Too eager. It was my pleasure, she tried instead. Too formal. Finally, she settled on, I had a wonderful time. Thank you for including me. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then appeared again. You're part of this now, Vivian. The agency, our lives, all of it. I hope you know that. Vivian read the message 3 times before putting her phone away, her heart doing something complicated in her chest. Part of this. When was the last time she'd been part of anything except her own ambition? The penthouse was exactly as she'd left it that morning, immaculate, silent. The city lights glittered through the floor-to-ceiling windows like a postcard of a life someone else was living. Vivian poured herself a glass of wine and stood at the window, looking out over Manhattan. Somewhere out there, Caleb was probably checking on Lila one more time before going to bed, making sure she was covered, kissing her forehead, being the kind of parent Vivian had never had and never thought she'd want to be around. Her phone rang. She almost didn't answer when she saw the caller ID, her mother. Vivian took a long sip of wine before accepting the call. Hello, Mother. Vivian. Finally, I've been calling for weeks. I've been busy. Too busy for your own mother? Catherine Sterling's voice carried its usual edge of disappointment that Vivian had spent 38 years trying and failing to dull. I heard about Whitmore. Why didn't you tell me? Of course she'd heard. Catherine Sterling made it her business to know everything happening in New York's professional circles, even from her retirement villa in Scottsdale. There was nothing to tell, Vivian said evenly. It was a business decision. I've already moved on. Moved on? Vivian, you threw away 15 years. You should be fighting this, calling lawyers, making sure they pay for what they did to you. They are paying. The severance was generous. Severance. Catherine said the word like it tasted bad. You sound like your father, always accepting defeat with dignity instead of fighting for what you deserve. Vivian's grip tightened on her wine glass. Her father had been a literature professor at Columbia, brilliant and kind and completely overshadowed by his wife's corporate ambitions. He'd died of a heart attack when Vivian was 25, and Catherine had remarked at the funeral that at least now he wouldn't hold Vivian back from her potential. I'm starting my own agency, Vivian said. Sterling Hayes Literary. I already have 10 clients and more interested. Hayes? Who's Hayes? My business partner, an editor I worked with at Whitmore. A partner? Catherine's tone sharpened. Vivian, you don't need a partner. You need employees, people who work for you, not with you. That's how you build power. I don't want power. I want something sustainable. Since when? You've spent your entire life chasing the corner office, and now you want to play small? This is about a man, isn't it? Vivian's stomach dropped. What? No. This is about building something better. I can hear it in your voice. You've gone soft. Let me guess. He has children? A sob story? Some reason you think you need to rescue him? The accuracy of it stung like a slap. This conversation is over, Vivian said quietly. Don't you dare hang up on me. I'm trying to save you from making the same mistakes I made. Your father was a lovely man, Vivian, but he made me weak. He made me care about things that didn't matter. Don't let some middle-class editor do the same to you. Vivian ended the call. Her hands were shaking. The wine glass trembled, sending tiny ripples across the surface of the burgundy liquid. Catherine Sterling had built a career as a corporate attorney by being ruthless, calculating, and completely alone. She'd pushed Vivian to be the same, stronger, harder, more successful. And Vivian had believed that was the only path worth taking. Until she'd woken up in a stranger's guest room wearing his shirt and realized her entire life had been a performance for an audience that didn't care. She set down her wine and pulled out her laptop. Work. She could bury herself in work and forget about her mother's voice and Caleb's kindness and the dangerous warmth growing in her chest. But when she opened her email, she found a message from Patricia Morrison. Vivian, just got the offer from Penguin. I can't believe it. 6 figures for a book Whitmore rejected. You're a miracle worker. Thank you for believing in me when no one else would. Vivian read the message twice, and something unfurled in her chest. This was why she'd started the agency. Not for power or prestige or revenge, but for this moment, knowing that she'd changed someone's life by simply believing in their work. She replied, "You did this, Patricia. I just opened the door. The book is extraordinary. I'm so proud to represent you." Then she closed her laptop and went to bed, falling asleep not to thoughts of market share and quarterly goals, but to the memory of Lila's laugh and Caleb's smile and the way his apartment had felt like home. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable heat, the kind that made New York streets shimmer and everyone move a little slower. Vivian arrived at the office early, as always, and found Caleb already there. He looked up from his laptop when she entered. "Morning. I brought muffins, blueberry, and chocolate chip." Vivian hung her bag on the hook by the door. "You don't have to keep bringing breakfast." "I know, but Lila insists on baking every Sunday, and we always have leftovers. You're doing me a favor." "Lila baked these?" "With minimal supervision and maximum chaos. They're delicious anyway." Vivian took a chocolate chip muffin and bit into it. The chocolate was still slightly melty, and the muffin itself was tender and sweet. "She's talented," Vivian said. "She gets that from her mother," Caleb said, then seemed to realize what he'd said. He looked away quickly, back to his screen. Vivian remembered what Rachel had told her at the party. She left when Lila was 2, just walked out one day and never came back. "Caleb," Vivian said gently, "you don't have to—" "We should go over the Maxwell contract," he interrupted. "I have some concerns about the rights language in Section 4. The subject change was abrupt and obvious, but Vivian let him have it. They spent the morning working in comfortable silence, broken only by occasional questions about contracts or editorial notes. Around noon, Caleb's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "It's Lila's school. I need to take this." "Of course." Vivian watched his expression shift as he listened, going from concern to worried to something harder. "I'll be there in 20 minutes, he said, then hung up. "What's wrong?" Vivian asked. "Lila got in a fight. They need me to come pick her up." "A fight? Lila?" Caleb was already grabbing his jacket. "She punched another kid in the face. They're calling it a serious behavioral incident." "That doesn't sound like her." "It's not." Caleb ran a hand through his hair, stress radiating off him in waves. "She's never done anything like this. I need to go." "Wait." Vivian stood. "Let me come with you." "Vivian, you don't have to, I know, but you're upset and you shouldn't drive like this. Let me call us a car." For a moment, Caleb looked like he might argue. Then he nodded. "Okay. Thank you." The ride to Lila's school was tense and quiet. Caleb stared out the window, his jaw tight, his hands clenched in his lap. Vivian wanted to say something comforting, but had no idea what that would even be. The school was a cheerful-looking building in the West 80s with colorful murals and a playground full of equipment. Inside, a receptionist directed them to the principal's office with a look that suggested this was not a good situation. Principal Dawson was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and a firm handshake. She stood when they entered, then looked surprised to see Vivian. "Mr. Hayes, and this is—" "Vivian Sterling," Caleb said. "My business partner. She's family." The word hit Vivian like a physical thing. Family. "Please sit," Principal Dawson said. "I'm afraid we have a serious situation. Lila punched another student during recess today. The other child has a bloody nose and is quite shaken up." Caleb's face went pale. "Is she okay? The other kid?" "She'll be fine, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for violence. I need to understand what precipitated this." "Where's Lila?" Caleb asked. "In the counselor's office. She's been crying for the past hour and won't tell us what happened." "I need to see her." "In a moment. First, I need to explain the consequences. Lila is suspended for 3 days, starting immediately. If there's another incident, we'll have to consider expulsion." Vivian watched Caleb absorb this information, watched him trying to hold himself together while his world tilted. "Can we see her now?" Vivian asked quietly. Principal Dawson nodded. "Follow me." They found Lila in a small office down the hall, sitting in a chair that was too big for her, her face red and puffy from crying. When she saw Caleb, she burst into fresh sobs. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." Caleb crossed the room in 3 strides and pulled her into his arms. Hey, it's okay. Just breathe, sweetheart, breathe." "I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to hurt her." "I know, but you need to tell me what happened." Lila pulled back, wiping her nose on her sleeve. Then she saw Vivian standing in the doorway, and her face crumpled again. "Vivian's here too?" "Of course I'm here," Vivian said, surprising herself with how natural it sounded. She crossed the room and knelt beside Lila's chair. "We're both here. You're not in trouble with us, okay? We just need to understand what happened." Lila looked between them, her lower lip trembling. "Madison said mean things." "What kind of mean things?" Caleb asked gently. "She said," Lila's voice dropped to a whisper, "she said I don't have a real family because I don't have a mom. She said that's why I'm weird and nobody wants to be my friend." Vivian felt rage flash through her so quickly she had to clench her fist to contain it. Caleb's expression went very still. "And that's when you hit her?" Lila nodded miserably. "I told her to take it back. She wouldn't. She just kept saying it. So I punched her like they do in movies when someone's being mean." "Oh, sweetheart." Caleb pulled her close again. "You can't hit people, no matter what they say. You know that, right?" "I know, but it made me so angry. I have a real family. I have you, and Grandma, and Emily, and now Vivian." She looked at Vivian with those wide, earnest eyes. "Right?" Vivian's throat closed up. She should deflect, should maintain appropriate boundaries, should remind this child that she was just her father's business partner, nothing more. Instead, she reached out and took Lila's small hand in hers. "Right," she said firmly. "You absolutely have a real family, and anyone who says otherwise is wrong." Lila squeezed her hand. "Madison made it sound like something's wrong with me because Mom left." "There's nothing wrong with you," Caleb said, his voice thick. "Nothing. Do you understand me? Your mom leaving was about her, not you. You are perfect exactly as you are." "Then why did she go?" The question hung in the air like a grenade. Caleb looked at Vivian, and in his eyes she saw years of pain he'd been carrying alone, trying to shield his daughter from the truth that sometimes people left for no good reason at all. "I don't know, baby," he said finally. "I wish I had a better answer, but I promise you, it wasn't because of anything you did. Some people just can't handle being parents, and that's their loss. Because you're the best thing that ever happened to me." Lila started crying again, but softer this time. Caleb held her while she cried, and Vivian stayed kneeling beside them, her hand still clasped in Lila's. After a while, Principal Dawson knocked gently on the open door. "Mr. Hayes, we need to finish the paperwork." The suspension was non-negotiable. 3 days, starting immediately. Lila would need to write an apology letter to Madison and meet with the school counselor when she returned. Caleb signed everything with shaking hands. On the car ride home, Lila sat between them in the back seat, quiet and exhausted. Vivian kept her arm around the girl's shoulders, feeling the weight of her small body tucked against her side. When they reached Caleb's apartment, he carried Lila inside even though she was too big to be carried. She wrapped her arms around his neck and didn't let go. "I'm going to put her down for a nap," Caleb said quietly to Vivian. "She's wiped out." "I should go. Give you both some space." "Please don't." The words were so quiet Vivian almost missed them. "Caleb, please just stay for a bit. I don't want to be alone right now." So Vivian stayed. She sat on the couch while Caleb tucked Lila into bed, listening to the murmur of his voice through the walls as he read her a story. When he finally emerged, he looked 10 years older than he had that morning. "Coffee?" he offered. Something stronger might be better. He managed a weak smile. "I have beer, or whiskey, that's probably gone bad." "Beer's fine." They sat on opposite ends of the couch, drinking in silence. Outside, the city hummed with its usual chaos. Inside, the apartment felt suspended in time. "I'm sorry you had to see that," Caleb said finally. "Don't apologize. I'm glad I was there." "I don't even know what to do. She's never been violent. Never. And now she's suspended, and the school thinks she's some kind of problem child, and—" He stopped, took a breath. "I'm failing her." "You're not failing her." You're raising a girl who's learning to defend herself and the people she loves. She just needs to learn better methods. She punched a kid in the face, Vivian, because that kid attacked her family, her identity, the thing that makes her feel safe in the world. Vivian set down her beer. Do you know what I would have done at 9 years old if someone said I didn't have a real family? What? Nothing. Absolutely nothing, because they would have been right. My mother was too busy building her empire to notice I existed, and my father was too gentle to stand up to her. I learned very early that family was just a word people used to excuse their obligations to each other. Caleb looked at her, really looked at her, and Vivian felt exposed in a way that had nothing to do with her breakdown outside that bar or waking up in his shirt. Lila has something I never had, Vivian continued. She has a parent who loves her enough to show up, who makes her pancakes and reads her stories and fights for her even when she makes mistakes. That's not failing, Caleb. That's everything. His eyes were bright. Then why does it feel like I'm drowning? Because you're doing it alone. And you shouldn't have to. The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. I'm here, Vivian said quietly, not just for the agency, for this, for her, for you, if you'll let me be. Caleb set down his beer very carefully. Vivian, what are we doing? I don't know. This isn't just business anymore. No, it's not. I have a 9-year-old daughter who just got suspended from school and a life that's complicated and messy and nothing like what you're used to. I know. And you still want what? To be part of it? Vivian looked at him. This man who'd saved her when she was broken, who'd given her a chance to build something better, who'd let her into his life with a generosity she'd never earned. I don't know what I want, she admitted. I've spent my whole life knowing exactly what I wanted and how to get it. But this, you and Lila and this life you've built, it terrifies me because I don't know the rules. I don't know how to be the person who gets invited to birthday parties and helps with school suspensions and sits on couches drinking beer in the middle of a Monday afternoon. You just did all those things because you made space for me, but I don't know if I deserve that space. Caleb shifted closer, not touching, but close enough that Vivian could feel the warmth of him. Here's what I know, he said. You showed up today, not because I asked you to, but because you wanted to. You held my daughter's hand and told her she has a real family. You made her believe it. That's not something someone does if they don't belong. I want to believe that. Then believe it. They sat there as the afternoon light shifted through the windows, not quite touching, but not quite separate either. Somewhere in the apartment, Lila slept off her emotional exhaustion. And here, in this small living room with its mismatched furniture and framed photos of a life Vivian was just beginning to understand, she felt something shift. Not just in her feelings for Caleb, but in her understanding of what family could mean. Not blood or obligation or corporate strategy, just showing up, being present, choosing to stay even when it would be easier to leave. I should get back to the office, Vivian said, though she didn't move. You should, Caleb agreed, also not moving. We have 3 client calls this afternoon. We do. Neither of them stood. Caleb's phone buzzed, breaking the moment. He glanced at it and sighed. Lila's school counselor, I need to set up a meeting. Do you want me to stay while you talk to her? Would you? Of course. So Vivian stayed through the phone call, watching Caleb navigate the bureaucracy of school discipline with patience and grace. She stayed while he checked on Lila, who was still sleeping. She stayed while he made them sandwiches neither of them ate because the day had stolen their appetites. And when she finally did leave, walking toward the subway in the early evening light, Vivian realized something fundamental had changed. She'd stopped performing. For the first time in her adult life, she'd simply existed in someone else's space without calculation or strategy. She'd been present not because it served a purpose, but because someone needed her, and it had felt right. Her phone buzzed. A text from Caleb. Thank you for today, for all of it. I don't know what I would have done without you. Vivian stopped walking, letting the sidewalk traffic flow around her. You would have done exactly what you always do, been an incredible father. I just got to witness it. The response came quickly. You're more than a witness, Vivian. You're part of this now. I hope you know that. She did know that, and it terrified her. And it was exactly what she wanted. Back at her apartment that night, Vivian stood at her window with a glass of wine and thought about choices. About the life she'd built that felt like a beautiful prison. About the mess and warmth of Caleb's apartment. About the way Lila had looked at her and said family, like it was the simplest truth in the world. Her phone rang. Unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Vivian Sterling. Miss Sterling, this is Jennifer Wu from Madison's family. Vivian's grip tightened on the phone, the girl Lila had punched. Yes? I wanted to call personally. Principal Dawson gave me your number as Lila's emergency contact. Emergency contact? When had that happened? I'm listening, Vivian said carefully. I know Madison said some terrible things today. Things she learned from her older sister, who's going through an awful phase of being cruel for sport. I wanted you to know that we don't condone that behavior. We've had a long talk with Madison about kindness and about how families come in all shapes. She'll be writing an apology letter, too. Vivian hadn't expected this. Thank you. I appreciate you calling. Lila's a sweet girl. This isn't who she is. I hope the school understands that. I'll make sure they do. After they hung up, Vivian stood there holding her phone, processing what had just happened. She'd been listed as Lila's emergency contact. Caleb had put her down as family. Not business partner. Not friend. Family. The word echoed through her empty apartment, filling spaces she hadn't known were hollow. And Vivian Sterling, who'd spent 38 years believing family was a weakness she couldn't afford, finally understood what she'd been missing. Not perfection. Not control. Just this. People who showed up when you needed them, who made space for you in their chaos, who trusted you enough to call you family even when you'd done nothing to earn it. She looked around her pristine apartment one more time. Then she pulled out her laptop and started searching for something smaller. Closer to Caleb's neighborhood. Somewhere that felt less like a showpiece and more like a place someone actually lived. Because whatever was happening between her and Caleb, whatever family she was being invited into, Vivian was done running from it. The apartment search consumed Vivian's evenings for the next week. She scrolled through listings during conference calls, bookmarked properties between client meetings, and spent her lunch breaks walking through neighborhoods she'd previously dismissed as too ordinary for someone of her status. She didn't tell Caleb what she was doing. Wasn't even sure herself what it meant. All she knew was that coming home to 22 floors of marble and silence had started to feel less like success and more like exile. Lila's suspension ended on Thursday. Vivian showed up at the office that morning to find Caleb already there, looking like he'd been awake since dawn. He was wearing the same shirt as yesterday and had dark circles under his eyes. Rough night? Vivian asked, setting down her bag. She had nightmares, kept waking up scared that she'd become a bad person. Caleb rubbed his face. I told her nobody becomes a bad person from one mistake, but try explaining moral complexity to a 9-year-old at 3 a.m. Did it work? She finally fell asleep around 5. I brought her to my mom's for the day. Didn't want her home alone thinking about it. Your mom lives in the city. Queens. She's been helping with Lila since... He trailed off, then shook his head. Since I needed help. Since his wife left, Vivian understood. Since he'd been doing this alone. You should go home and sleep, she said. I can handle the Morrison call at 2. I'm fine. Caleb, you look like you're about to fall over. I said I'm fine. His tone was sharper than usual, and immediately he looked apologetic. Sorry, It's been a long week. Vivian studied him, the tension in his shoulders, the way he kept glancing at his phone like he expected another crisis, the exhaustion bleeding through every movement. She recognized it because she'd worn it herself for 15 years. When's the last time you took a break? She asked quietly. I don't know. Why does everyone keep asking me that? Because you're running yourself into the ground, and eventually that's going to catch up with you. I don't have a choice. Single parent, new job, daughter who just got suspended. I can't afford to slow down. You can't afford not to. Caleb looked at her, something defensive flickering across his face. Not all of us have the luxury of $2 million in severance, Vivian. Some of us need to work every hour we can just to stay afloat. The words hit like a slap. Vivian stepped back. I didn't mean... I know. I'm sorry. That was unfair. Caleb slumped into his chair. I'm just tired and scared and feeling like maybe I'm not cut out for this partnership thing because I can't compartmentalize the way you can. My daughter gets suspended and I fall apart. You lose your entire career and you just start over like it's nothing. It wasn't nothing, Vivian said, her voice tight. It destroyed me. You know that. You're the one who found me falling apart on a sidewalk. And then you rebuilt in 3 weeks, founded an agency, signed clients, made it look effortless. Meanwhile, I'm drowning because my kid punched someone and I don't know how to help her process her feelings about her mother without falling apart myself. The pain in his voice was raw and real, and Vivian suddenly understood that this wasn't about her or the agency or even Lila's suspension. This was about a man who'd been holding everything together for 7 years and was finally reaching his breaking point. She pulled a chair close to his desk and sat down. Talk to me. What's really going on? Caleb was quiet for a long moment, then softly. Lila asked me last night if her mom left because she wasn't good enough. Because if she'd been a better baby, prettier, or smarter, or less work, maybe her mom would have stayed. Vivian's chest tightened. What did you tell her? The truth. That her mother left because she was 23 years old and scared and not ready to be a parent. That it had nothing to do with Lila being enough or not enough. But she kept asking why other kids have moms and she doesn't, and I didn't have a good answer. Because there isn't one. I know, but it kills me that she thinks she's missing something fundamental, that there's something wrong with her life because it doesn't look like everyone else's. Vivian reached across the desk and took his hand. The gesture surprised them both, but she didn't let go. There's nothing wrong with her life, she said firmly. She has a father who loves her unconditionally, a grandmother who helps, friends who care about her, and now she has me. That's not missing something. That's having everything that matters. Caleb's eyes met hers, and something passed between them that felt like a question neither was ready to ask out loud. When did you become her emergency contact? Vivian asked. After the birthday party. I updated her school forms. I should have asked first, but I'm glad you did. His hand tightened around hers. Are you? Really? Because this is messy, Vivian. Being in our lives means dealing with school suspensions and nightmares and questions about absent mothers. It means showing up when things are hard, not just when they're convenient. I know. And you want that? Vivian thought about her empty apartment, her mother's voice telling her that caring made you weak. The 15 years she'd spent building a career that crumbled in a single meeting. I want something real, she said quietly. I've had convenient, I've had controlled, I've had perfect and pristine and completely hollow. I don't want that anymore. What do you want? The question hung in the air between them, loaded with implications neither could ignore. Before Vivian could answer, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen and her stomach dropped. Amanda Corso. She'd completely forgotten to follow up after declining the partnership offer. I need to take this, she said, reluctantly releasing Caleb's hand. It's Amanda. She stepped into the small conference room and answered. Amanda, I apologize for not following up sooner. No apology necessary. I'm calling with a different proposition. I've been watching what you're building and I'm impressed. You've signed some solid clients in a very short time. Thank you. So here's my offer. I don't need a partner anymore, but I do need someone to handle my young adult division. 3 of my clients write YA, and I don't have the bandwidth to give them the attention they deserve. I want to outsource their representation to you. Retainer fee plus commission on all deals. It would give you immediate credibility and steady income. It was a good offer, a smart offer, exactly the kind of stability Sterling Hayes Literary needed. What's the catch? Vivian asked. No catch, just business. Though I would need an answer soon. My clients are getting antsy. Vivian looked through the glass at Caleb, still slumped at his desk, carrying the weight of a life that required more than business strategy could fix. Can I call you back tomorrow? Vivian asked. Tomorrow works. But Vivian? Don't overthink this. Sometimes the smart play is the obvious one. After the call ended, Vivian returned to find Caleb reviewing a manuscript, though she could tell from his expression he wasn't actually reading. Everything okay? he asked. Amanda offered us a contract, outsourcing her YA clients to our agency. Caleb looked up. That's huge. What did you say? That I'd think about it. Why? This is exactly what we need. Is it? Vivian, we have 10 clients and operating costs that are bleeding your severance dry. A contract with Amanda would stabilize everything. It would also mean working 80-hour weeks again, less flexibility, less time for... She gestured vaguely, not sure how to finish the sentence. For what? For sitting with him while his daughter processed trauma? For being present in ways that didn't show up on a balance sheet? Caleb seemed to understand. You don't have to sacrifice the business for us. What if I want to? That's not sustainable. Neither is you falling apart because you're trying to do everything alone. They stared at each other, the tension crackling between them like static electricity. What are we doing, Vivian? Caleb asked again, echoing the question from earlier. Because this feels like more than just business partners. And if it is more, we need to be honest about it. Vivian's heart hammered. This was the moment. The cliff's edge. She could step back into safety, maintain professional boundaries, keep her life compartmentalized and controlled. Or she could jump. I'm looking for a new apartment, she said instead. Caleb blinked. What? In your neighborhood. Something smaller, closer to the office, closer to... She took a breath. Closer to you and Lila. The words hung in the air like a confession. Caleb stood slowly. Why? Because I don't want to live in a museum anymore. I want to live somewhere that feels like home. In your neighborhood, your life. It feels more like home than anywhere I've been in 20 years. Vivian, I know this is complicated. I know I have no right to insert myself into your life like this. But you asked me what I want, and I'm telling you, I want this. You, Lila, the messy, beautiful chaos of it. I want to be part of it. Caleb crossed the small office in 2 strides and cupped her face in his hands. You're sure? Because once you're in, you're in. Lila gets attached. I get attached. There's no casual version of this. I don't want casual. I've spent my whole life being casual about everything that matters. I'm done with that. He kissed her then, and it wasn't tentative or uncertain. It was relief and longing, and the release of weeks of tension they'd both been pretending didn't exist. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Caleb pressed his forehead to hers. We should probably talk about this, he murmured. Probably. Set some boundaries, figure out how to balance business and personal. Very practical. I'm a practical person. You're kissing me in our office in the middle of a workday. Good point. He kissed her again, softer this time. We're terrible at boundaries. The worst. They stood there wrapped in each other until Vivian's phone alarm went off, reminding her of the Morrison call. Reality crashed back in. We have work, she said reluctantly. We do. But neither of them moved. Finally, Caleb stepped back, running a hand through his hair. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to be smart about this. We're going to take Amanda's offer because it's good business. We're going to set actual working hours so I can be present for Lila and you can have a life outside this office. And we're going to figure out what this is between us without rushing or panicking or making decisions based on fear. That sounds extremely reasonable. I contain multitudes. Vivian laughed, and it felt good. Easy. Like something she'd been holding back for years was finally allowed to breathe. They made it through the Morrison call and the 3 meetings after that, and somehow maintained professionalism even though Vivian kept catching Caleb looking at her with an expression that made her stomach flip. At 6 o'clock, Caleb started packing up. Picking up Lila from your mom's? Vivian asked. Yeah, want to come with? The casual invitation felt monumental. You sure? Vivian, you're her emergency contact. I'm pretty sure we're past the are you sure stage. So Vivian found herself in Caleb's car driving to Queens, watching the city give way to residential neighborhoods with actual trees and houses that didn't scrape the sky. Caleb's mother lived in a small brick house with a garden full of tomatoes and a welcome mat that said, "Bless this mess." She opened the door before they'd even finished walking up the path, and Vivian saw immediately where Caleb got his warmth. Rita Hayes was in her early 60s, with gray hair pulled back in a bun and Caleb's exact smile. She looked at Vivian with open curiosity, but no judgment. So you're Vivian. I've heard a lot about you. All good things, I hope. My son doesn't talk about people unless they matter. So yes, good things. Rita pulled her into a hug before Vivian could prepare for it. Any woman who shows up for my grandbaby earns my respect. Come in, come in. Inside, Lila was at the kitchen table working on her apology letter to Madison. She looked up when they entered, and her face split into a huge grin. Vivian, you came! Of course I came. Lila abandoned the letter and threw her arms around Vivian's waist. The hug was tight and trusting and made Vivian's eyes sting. How's the letter coming? Caleb asked, kissing the top of Lila's head. Hard. Grandma says I have to mean it, not just say what they want to hear. Grandma's right. Rita handed Vivian a cup of coffee without asking if she wanted one. Sit. You look like you need feeding. When's the last time you had a proper meal? I'm not sure. That's what I thought. Caleb, set the table. We're having early dinner. And just like that, Vivian found herself sitting at Rita Hayes' kitchen table eating homemade lasagna while Lila chattered about her day and Caleb argued with his mother about whether the tomatoes needed more water. It was so completely normal, so beautifully ordinary. And Vivian had never felt more at peace. After dinner, Rita shooed them out with containers of leftovers and explicit instructions for Caleb to stop working so hard. And you, she said to Vivian at the door. Take care of my son. He's stubborn and won't ask for help even when he needs it. I'm standing right here, Caleb protested. I know. That's why I'm telling her instead of you. On the drive back to Manhattan, Lila fell asleep in the back seat. Vivian watched the city lights blur past and felt Caleb's hand find hers across the console. Your mom is wonderful, she said quietly. She likes you. That's a big deal. How can you tell? She fed you. She doesn't feed people she doesn't trust. When they reached Vivian's building, Caleb walked her to the lobby despite her protests that he didn't need to. When do I get to see this new apartment you're looking for? He asked. When I find one worth showing you. What are you looking for? Vivian considered the question. A month ago, she would have listed square footage and amenities and investment potential. Now she said, somewhere I can have people over without feeling like they're disturbing a museum exhibit. Somewhere that feels lived in. Maybe a place with a kitchen I'd actually use. Caleb smiled. That's very specific. I'm learning. He kissed her goodnight in the lobby, soft and sweet, with the doorman pretending not to notice. Tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow. Upstairs, Vivian's apartment felt more hollow than ever, but instead of letting it depress her, she opened her laptop and kept searching. 3 days later, she found it. A 2-bedroom in a pre-war building on West 79th Street. Hardwood floors, a kitchen with actual counter space, windows that let in natural light, and a second bedroom that could be an office or a guest room or whatever she needed it to be. It was half the size of her penthouse and cost 60% less. It was perfect. She called the broker immediately and scheduled a viewing for that afternoon. When she told Caleb at the office that morning, he looked up from his manuscript with raised eyebrows. You're serious about this? Completely. Want to come see it with me? You want my opinion on your apartment? I want your opinion on everything. The vulnerability in her voice made Caleb's expression soften. What time? 4 o'clock. I'll be there. They met the broker at the building, a charming woman in her 50s who clearly sensed this was more than a standard viewing. The previous tenant was an artist, she explained, leading them up to the 3rd floor. She lived here for 30 years before moving to Santa Fe. The place has good energy. Vivian usually dismissed talk of energy as real estate nonsense, but when the broker opened the door, she understood. The apartment was bright and warm, with crown molding and built-in bookshelves and a fireplace that probably didn't work but looked charming anyway. The kitchen had white subway tiles and enough space for a table. The bedroom was cozy rather than cavernous. It felt like a home. Caleb wandered through slowly, running his hand along the windowsill, checking the water pressure in the bathroom, examining the closets like he was the one buying it. What do you think? Vivian asked. I think you could be happy here. That's what I thought too. The broker excused herself to take a call, leaving them alone in the empty living room. The second bedroom would make a good office, Caleb said. Close the door when you need to focus, but still part of the home. Or it could be a guest room, for when Lila wants to have sleepovers. The words came out before Vivian could stop them. Caleb turned to her, something intense in his expression. You're planning for Lila to sleep over? I'm planning for a life that includes her, both of you, if that's okay. Vivian, are you sure you know what you're getting into? Because once we do this, once we really do this, there's no going back. Lila will want you at school events and soccer games and every birthday party. I'll want you for dinner most nights and lazy Sunday mornings. We're a package deal, and it's intense. I know. And you still want it? Vivian crossed the empty room and took both his hands. I've never wanted anything more in my life. I spent 15 years chasing something I thought would make me happy. And the moment I got it, it disappeared. But this? You and Lila and the mess and the beauty of it? This feels real. This feels like something worth building. Caleb pulled her close, tucking her head under his chin. I'm terrified, he admitted, of letting you in and having you realize it's too much, that we're too much. You're not too much. You're exactly enough. They stood there in the empty apartment that might become Vivian's home, holding each other like they were the only solid thing in an uncertain world. I'm taking it, Vivian said. The apartment. I want it. Good. Because Lila's going to want to help you decorate. I was hoping she would. When they left the building an hour later, paperwork signed and deposit paid, Vivian felt lighter than she had in years. She had an apartment that felt like a home, a business that was growing, and standing beside her, his hand warm in hers, was a man who'd seen her at her worst and chosen to believe in her anyway. Want to grab dinner? Caleb asked. Lila's with my mom tonight. We could actually go somewhere without having to rush back. Like a date? Exactly, like a date. They ended up at a small Italian restaurant in the West Village, tucked into a corner booth with red checkered tablecloths and candles that dripped wax onto wine bottles. Over pasta and wine, they talked about everything they'd been dancing around for weeks. Caleb told her about Lila's mother, a woman named Sarah who'd been his college girlfriend and gotten pregnant unexpectedly. How she'd tried for 2 years before admitting she wasn't built for motherhood. How she'd left one morning while Lila was at daycare and never came back. I was angry for a long time, Caleb admitted, but then I realized anger was just another way of staying attached to her. And I needed to let go. For Lila and for me. Do you ever hear from her? Birthday cards sometimes, always postmarked from different cities. I saved them for Lila in case she wants them someday, but she's never asked. Vivian told him about her mother, about growing up in a house where love was conditional on achievement and vulnerability was punished as weakness. She called me soft when I told her about the agency, Vivian said. Said I was letting a man make me weak. And what do you think? I think I've never been stronger. Because for the first time, I'm building something that matters instead of something that looks impressive. Caleb reached across the table and laced his fingers through hers. You're remarkable. You know that, right? I'm a work in progress. Aren't we all? They walked home slowly, in no rush to end the evening. At Vivian's building, Caleb pulled her close. Can I come up? He asked softly. Vivian's heart raced. Are you sure? Once we cross this line, we crossed the line weeks ago, Vivian. I'm just finally admitting it. So she took his hand and led him upstairs to her pristine penthouse that would soon be just a memory. And that night, in the museum of her old life, Vivian Sterling finally allowed herself to be human, to be vulnerable, to be loved. When she woke the next morning to find Caleb still there, his arm around her waist and his breath warm against her neck, she didn't panic. She just felt home. Sunlight streamed through the floor-to-ceiling windows, painting golden stripes across Vivian's white sheets. She lay still for a moment, listening to Caleb's steady breathing beside her, trying to remember the last time she'd woken up next to another person and felt this calm. She couldn't. Caleb stirred, his arm tightening around her waist before his eyes opened. When he saw her watching him, he smiled, slow and warm and completely unguarded. Morning, he murmured. Morning. Any regrets? Vivian considered the question seriously. A month ago, she would have had a list. Complications with a business partner, blurred professional boundaries, the risk of it all falling apart and taking the agency with it. Now she just said, none. You? Not even one. He kissed her shoulder, though I do need to get home before Lila wakes up at my mom's. She's got a sixth sense for when I'm not where I'm supposed to be. What time does she usually wake up? Caleb checked his phone and winced. 20 minutes ago. You should go. I should. But he didn't move. Come with me. We're making waffles. It's Saturday tradition. The invitation was casual, but the meaning behind it wasn't. Saturday morning waffles were family time, sacred time, and he was inviting her into it like she belonged there. I'd love to, Vivian said. They took the subway to Queens together, Caleb's hand warm in hers, both of them wrapped in the comfortable silence of two people who'd stopped pretending they were anything other than completely gone for each other. Rita's house smelled like coffee and bacon when they arrived. Lila was at the kitchen table in her pajamas, working on a drawing, but she looked up when they entered and her eyes went wide. Vivian and Daddy, together, in the morning. Her grin was enormous. Did you have a sleepover? Caleb's ears went red. Lila, that's so cool. Can I have sleepovers with Emily again? You said I had to wait until I showed better judgment, but if you're having sleepovers, then... Lila, Rita's voice was firm but amused. Let your father breathe. Lila bounced over and hugged them both simultaneously. Are you dating now? Like boyfriend and girlfriend, but grown up? Vivian looked at Caleb, unsure how to navigate this conversation. Caleb knelt down to Lila's eye level. Would that be okay with you if Vivian and I were dating? Lila pretended to think about it very seriously. Will she still come to my soccer games? I wouldn't miss them, Vivian said. And will you still help me with my writing homework? Because Dad's good at editing, but you're better at making the words sound fancy. Anytime you want. And when you get married, can I be the flower girl? Lila! Caleb looked like he might combust. We've been dating for approximately 12 hours. Let's not plan the wedding. But Vivian found herself smiling. If I ever get married, you'd be the first person I'd ask. Lila threw her arms around Vivian's waist. I knew you'd be my family. I knew it at my birthday party. Over Lila's head, Vivian caught Rita's eye. The older woman was watching them with an expression that looked like satisfaction mixed with relief. They made waffles together, Caleb at the stove, Lila measuring ingredients with intense concentration, Vivian setting the table under Rita's direction. It was chaotic and loud and perfect, and when they finally sat down to eat, Vivian realized she was part of something she'd never experienced before. A family breakfast where nobody was performing or proving anything, where the only goal was being together. So, Rita said, passing the syrup, when do I get to see this new apartment of yours? How did you... Caleb tells me everything. It's a mother's privilege, Rita smiled. He said it's in the city, close to them. On 79th Street. I move in next month. Good. Too far uptown was ridiculous anyway. You need to be where your people are. Your people. The phrase settled over Vivian like a warm blanket. After breakfast, Caleb had to take Lila to soccer practice. Vivian offered to come along, but Rita stopped her. Stay a moment, help me with these dishes. It wasn't really a request. Once they were alone in the kitchen, Rita handed Vivian a dish towel and got straight to the point. My son's been hurt before, badly. I'm sure he's told you about Sarah. He mentioned her, yes. What he probably didn't mention is that it nearly destroyed him. He was 25 years old with a 2-year-old daughter and a wife who walked out like they meant nothing. He spent a year barely holding it together. I've never seen anyone work so hard to be strong for someone else. Vivian dried a plate carefully, letting Rita speak. He's been alone for 7 years because he's terrified of letting someone in and having them leave again. Terrified of Lila getting attached to someone who disappears. Rita turned to face her fully. So I need to know if you're serious about this. About them. Because if you're not, if there's any chance you'll wake up one day and decide this life isn't what you want, you need to walk away now. The words should have felt like a threat. Instead, they felt like protection, a mother defending her son and granddaughter the only way she knew how. I understand why you're asking, Vivian said quietly, and I can't promise I won't make mistakes. I've never done this before, been part of a family, dated someone with a child, built a life that wasn't just about work. I'm going to mess up, but I can promise you this. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not Sarah. I'm not someone who runs when things get hard. How can you be sure? Because I already had my running moment. When I lost my job and my entire identity collapsed, I could have disappeared, started over somewhere else, rebuilt my career in another city. Instead, I chose to stay. I chose to build something here, with Caleb. And every day since then, I've chosen this. Them. This messy, complicated, beautiful life. That's not going to change. Rita studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled. Good. Because Lila's already picked out bridesmaids' dresses, pink with sparkles. You've been warned. Vivian laughed, feeling the tension break. I'll keep that in mind. The next few weeks blurred together in the best possible way. Sterling Hayes Literary signed the contract with Amanda Corso, bringing in 3 YA authors and enough steady income to stop the constant anxiety about cash flow. Vivian's apartment sale went through quickly. Apparently, penthouses in her building didn't stay on the market long. And slowly, carefully, Vivian and Caleb figured out how to be partners in both business and life. They set boundaries. No discussing work after 7 p.m. unless it was urgent. Alternating who picked up Lila from school. Keeping their relationship professional at the office, at least during client meetings. But the boundaries were flexible, bending around the reality that their lives were now completely intertwined. Vivian started joining them for dinner most nights, sometimes cooking in Caleb's cramped kitchen, sometimes bringing takeout, sometimes just sitting at the table while Caleb and Lila cooked together. She helped Lila with homework. She attended soccer games and cheered embarrassingly loud when Lila scored. She learned that Lila liked her sandwiches cut diagonally and hated crusts and always wanted one more story before bed. She learned that Caleb drank his coffee black in the morning but with milk in the afternoon, that he was ticklish behind his left knee, that he had nightmares sometimes about Sarah coming back and taking Lila away, even though legally she had no right. She learned what it meant to be needed by people who chose to need her. Moving day arrived on a crisp October Saturday. Caleb, Rita, and even Lila showed up at Vivian's penthouse with boxes and packing tape and enough energy to make the whole thing feel like an adventure rather than a chore. You have so much stuff, Lila announced, standing in the middle of Vivian's walk-in closet. This is bigger than my whole bedroom. I may have overdone it on the wardrobe, Vivian admitted. You think? Caleb appeared in the doorway, holding up a designer gown with a price tag still attached. When were you planning to wear this? It was on sale. It costs more than my car. Your car is 17 years old. And still running, thank you very much. They packed and laughed and ordered pizza for lunch, sitting on the floor of Vivian's empty living room, eating directly from the box because all the dishes were already wrapped. I can't believe you lived here alone, Lila said, staring up at the high ceilings. Weren't you lonely? The question was innocent, but it landed like a punch. Yes, Vivian said honestly. I was very lonely. I just didn't realize it until I met you. Lila leaned against her side. Well, you're not lonely anymore. You have us. I do. I really do. The new apartment felt instantly different. Rita helped arrange furniture while Caleb assembled bookshelves, and Lila insisted on organizing Vivian's books by color instead of author. It looks better this way, Lila declared, stepping back to admire her rainbow arrangement. It's completely impractical, Vivian said. But pretty. But pretty, Vivian agreed and left it that way. By evening, the apartment was mostly settled. Not perfect. There were still boxes to unpack and pictures to hang and 1,000 small touches that would take weeks to complete. But it felt lived in. It felt real. It felt like home. After Rita left and Lila fell asleep on the new couch mid-movie, Caleb carried her to the guest room, the room Vivian had already started thinking of as Lila's room, and tucked her in. When he returned, he found Vivian standing at the window, looking out over the neighborhood that was now hers. You okay? He asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind. More than okay. I'm happy. You sound surprised. I am. I didn't think I knew how to be happy. I thought I only knew how to be successful. And now? Now I know they're not the same thing. She turned in his arms. Thank you for this, for everything. You don't have to thank me for loving you. The words hung in the air between them. Neither had said it yet, though they'd both felt it for weeks. "I love you too," Vivian whispered. "I didn't think I was capable of it, but I do. I love you and Lila and this entire chaotic, beautiful life we're building." Caleb kissed her, soft and deep and full of promise. "Move in with us." Vivian pulled back. "What?" "Not right now, but eventually. This apartment is great, but it's still yours. I want an ours. A place where Lila has her own room and you have space for your clothes and we can wake up together every morning without having to plan it. That's a big step." "I know, and we don't have to rush, but I need you to know that's where I see this going. Not someday in the distant future. Someday soon." Vivian thought about her old life, the carefully controlled existence where she'd measured every decision against career advancement and social standing, where the idea of cohabitation would have been calculated for maximum professional benefit. This was different. This was choosing love over logic, choosing family over independence, choosing a life that was messy and real and infinitely more valuable than anything she'd had before. "Someday soon sounds perfect," she said. 3 months later, on a January morning when the city was blanketed in fresh snow, Vivian stood in the office reviewing their year-end numbers. Sterling Hayes Literary had finished their first full year with 18 clients, 6 best-selling deals, and enough revenue to hire 2 more staff members. They'd done it. Built something sustainable and successful and completely their own. Caleb walked in carrying 2 mugs of hot chocolate, a new morning tradition since Vivian had discovered she actually liked something sweet in the mornings. "Lila wants to know if you're coming to her recital tonight," he said, handing her a mug. "The winter concert? Wouldn't miss it. She's playing the violin solo. She's been practicing for months." "I know. I've heard every practice session." Vivian smiled. "She's incredible." "She is." Caleb set down his mug and pulled a small box from his pocket. "And speaking of incredible things," Vivian's breath caught. "This isn't what you think," Caleb said quickly. "Not yet anyway. Open it." Inside the box was a key. "It's to the house," Caleb explained. "The one we looked at last month in Park Slope. The one with the yard and the extra bedroom and the kitchen big enough for all of us. I put in an offer yesterday. They accepted this morning." "Caleb, that's huge. That's a commitment." "I know. But I'm ready if you are. A real home for all of us. Equal names on the deed. Equal say in how we build our life." Vivian looked at the key, at the man holding it, at the future it represented. A year ago, she'd woken up in a stranger's bed with no memory and no direction. She'd lost everything she thought mattered. And in losing it, she'd found everything that actually did. "I'm ready," she said. "I'm so ready." The winter concert was held in Lila's school auditorium, packed with parents and siblings and grandparents, all clutching programs and cell phones ready to record. Vivian sat between Caleb and Rita, feeling nervous in a way she never had before business presentations. This mattered more. When Lila walked onto the stage in her black dress with her violin tucked under her chin, Vivian's heart swelled. The girl who'd greeted her in unicorn pajamas months ago now stood poised and confident, ready to perform for hundreds of people. The music started. Something classical Vivian didn't recognize, but that sounded achingly beautiful. Lila's fingers moved across the strings with practiced precision, her eyes closed, completely lost in the music. Caleb's hand found Vivian's and squeezed tight. When the piece ended, the applause was thunderous. Lila opened her eyes and grinned, searching the crowd until she found them. She waved, unself-conscious and joyful, and Vivian waved back. After the concert, Lila ran to them and threw herself into Vivian's arms first. "Did you see? Did I do good?" "You were perfect," Vivian said, holding her tight. "Absolutely perfect. I was so nervous I thought I might throw up. But you didn't. You were brave and talented and amazing." Lila pulled back and looked between Vivian and Caleb. "Dad told me about the new house, the one with the big yard." "He did? Are you moving in with us for real? Like, all the time?" Vivian glanced at Caleb, who shrugged as if to say, "She asked?" I answered. "Yes," Vivian said. "If that's okay with you." "It's the best thing ever. Emily's mom said it's basically like you're my new mom, but Dad said that's not how it works. You're Vivian, and that's enough." "Your dad's right. I'm not trying to replace anyone. I'm just trying to be part of your family." You already are part of our family, silly. Lila hugged her again. You've been family since forever. That night, after Lila was asleep and they'd returned to Vivian's apartment, Caleb pulled out the house key again. There's something else I need to say. Vivian's stomach fluttered. What? When I give you a ring, and I will give you a ring, probably sooner than you think, it won't be because I need you to complete me, or because Lila needs a mother, or because it makes practical sense for the business. No? No. It'll be because you walked into our lives when you had every reason to run, because you chose us when you could have chosen safety, because you're the strongest, bravest, most infuriatingly perfect person I've ever met, and I want to spend the rest of my life watching you become even more yourself. Vivian's eyes filled with tears. That's quite a speech. I've been practicing. How long have you been planning this? Since the moment you showed up at Lila's birthday party looking terrified and stayed anyway. He cupped her face in his hands. Since the moment you held my daughter's hand and told her she has a real family. Since the moment I realized that falling for you was the easiest thing I'd ever done. I love you, Vivian whispered. I love you so much it scares me. Good. Being scared means it matters. They stood in her apartment, the space that was already feeling temporary, already just a stopping point between her old life and the new one waiting. And Vivian understood something fundamental. She hadn't lost everything when Whitmore fired her. She'd been set free, free to build something better, free to love without calculation, free to be human instead of perfect, free to find her way home. 6 months later, Vivian stood in the backyard of their new house in Park Slope, watching Caleb push Lila on the tire swing they'd installed last weekend. The May sunshine filtered through the trees, and somewhere nearby a neighbor was grilling and music was playing, and life was happening in all its messy, beautiful glory. Sterling Hayes Literary was thriving. They'd moved to a bigger office and hired 3 junior agents and were fielding calls from publishers daily. But Vivian left the office at 5:30 every day now, because dinner with Caleb and Lila mattered more than any deal. Her mother had called once since the move. Vivian had let it go to voicemail, then deleted it without listening. Some relationships weren't worth saving, and she'd made peace with that. The family she'd built, the one she'd chosen, and that had chosen her back, that was worth everything. Vivian! Lila shouted from the swing. Come push me! Daddy's not going high enough. I'm going plenty high, Caleb protested. Higher! I want to touch the sky! Vivian set down her iced tea and crossed the yard. Caleb stepped aside with a mock bow, and she took over pushing duties, sending Lila soaring higher and higher, while the girl shrieked with delight. When Lila finally jumped off mid-swing and ran inside to get water, Caleb pulled Vivian close. Happy? He asked. Deliriously. Any regrets about leaving your penthouse and your corner office and your perfectly controlled life? Vivian looked at the house. Their house, with its creaky floors and outdated bathrooms and the vegetable garden they were trying to grow in the back corner. She looked at Caleb with his worn jeans and paint-stained shirt from the bedroom they'd been renovating. She looked at the open back door where Lila would reappear any second, probably with some new scheme or question or request. Not even one, she said. That night, after Lila was in bed and they were sitting on their new porch drinking wine and watching fireflies, Caleb pulled out a ring. Not the key this time. An actual ring. I know we said we'd wait, he started, but I don't want to wait anymore. I want to marry you. I want Lila to be a flower girl in a pink sparkly dress. I want to promise in front of everyone we know that you're stuck with us forever. Vivian took the ring, simple, elegant, perfect, and slipped it on her finger. Yes, she said, to all of it. Yes. They were married 3 months later in Rita's backyard, surrounded by friends and colleagues and clients who'd become family. Lila wore the promised pink sparkly dress and took her flower girl duties extremely seriously. Patricia Morrison read a passage from her novel. Amanda Corso gave a toast about taking chances on people who surprise you. And when Vivian walked down the makeshift aisle toward Caleb, she wasn't walking toward safety or security or any of the things she'd spent her life chasing. She was walking toward love, toward the man who'd found her broken and helped her rebuild. Toward the daughter who'd taught her that family wasn't about blood, it was about showing up. Toward a life that was messy and imperfect and more beautiful than anything she could have planned. When the officiant asked if she took Caleb to be her husband, Vivian didn't hesitate. I do. And when she kissed him, her husband, her partner, her home, she tasted salt from happy tears and heard Lila cheering and felt the weight of her old life finally, completely fall away. She'd lost her job, her identity, everything she thought made her matter, and she'd gained a family, a purpose, a reason to wake up every morning that had nothing to do with achievement and everything to do with love. Years later, when people asked Vivian Sterling Hayes how she'd built such a successful agency, she always gave the same answer. I stopped trying to build success and started trying to build a life. The success followed. But the real story, the one she saved for quiet moments with Caleb, the one she'd eventually tell Lila when she was old enough to understand, was simpler. She'd woken up in a stranger's bed wearing his shirt with no memory of how she got there. And that stranger had seen past her defenses, past her armor, past everything she'd built to protect herself from being human. He'd seen her, and he'd chosen her anyway. That was the real story, not about losing everything, but about finding the one thing that actually mattered: home.